Two punks fuck shit up in mid-1980s Salt Lake City, living in squalor of freedom as they fight the system, party it up, and meet a cast of wild characters, and find love along the way. It's SLC Punk.
SLC Punk. Like that's what it said in the
I was
description.
say, are we recording? I was confused.
Oh yeah, that was it. I did the intro. That was
The intro, man.
Brian's pick for movie club was SLC Punk, and am I glad he picked it? I don't know. We'll see. We got a whole slew
Man, you're
of
being
categories.
so skeptical about this. Like, I feel like you're like
He's not giving us. He's not giving us answers because
I know
it's podcast
He's not gonna
time.
give us his.
So,
I'm
I
ready.
feel like this is honestly. I feel like this is a movie that John isn't going to like, but
So
we'll
our
find out.
categories before we go, we updated these categories. Initial thoughts. So Brian being the host, each person that picks the movie is the host of the episode, as we decided in Brian. Sorry. So we have all these categories. Initial thoughts. We're going to talk about what we thought before the movie and when we watched the movie. Things we liked, not feeling it. Things we didn't like. Quotables, and there's a lot in this one. Eye candy, and we changed that from God shots to eye candy because apparently y'all didn't like that. So this also has to do with like beautifully shot sequences as well as the cinematography for just like one shot if you like it. Oh shit moments, and that's of course oh shit, how you would naturally react to something crazy happening on screen. Change one thing, make it better. Watch it again. Does it sequel? And scene thief, the person that stole the show in the flick. So without me talking anymore, Brian, take it away.
All right, so I go over a quick recap, right? That's how that works.
I already did it. I already did that quick recap.
Oh shit. Okay.
Pretty quick recap.
Yeah, that was a really quick recap.
I mean, it says quick recap. Originally, I had wrote a note in there that said take less than 5 minutes. And I was like, okay, I'll do
Take
like
less than 5
minutes.
Yeah, so I'm curious on your guys' thoughts. Like, let's I guess we're going through the initial thoughts. Let's go ahead. You know what? I want Marissa's thoughts. She was like, I'm ready to talk about this movie. I want your thoughts, Marissa. Like, what's going on? What are those thoughts?
I'm unsure if I should cut like some of this into other categories I know we're gonna have, but I'll summarize how I felt. I watched this movie when I was really young, like in junior high, because I was going through a punk phase.
Oh,
like,
shoot.
I liked a lot of like British punk. I listened to the Sex Pistols and I listened to the Ramones, and I like nosedived right into a bunch of like music history. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna watch this movie. And then I watched it, and at the end of the movie, I was so like, what? I can't believe he did that. Like, what the fuck? He's selling out, right? And then you go back and you watch. It's one of those movies you go back and you watch later as an adult, and they're like, oh shit. There was way more going on to this fucking movie than I remembered there being, and it's living in Salt Lake now. It's even crazier because I've met people that were punks in the 90s when this movie came out, and I could talk about this now or I could save it for later. But I had my boss. This is the punchline. So first of all, I was like, oh yeah, Salt Lake, you were a punk in the 90s, because he had like piercings, tattoos all over his body. And he was straight edge, so he didn't do any drugs, alcohol, didn't smoke or anything.
Just like Bob.
Just
Well,
like
Bob
Bob,
smoked
yeah.
and
exactly.
Drank. Never
Well,
mind.
yeah, he
wasn't
didn't smoke.
really straight edge.
Okay, but yeah, exactly. He was straight edge, but not truly straight edge. But anyway, this guy, and he said when they went and watched the movie, because they were so excited to see it coming out, and when they saw the movie, they were like, "This is a fucking joke. This isn't our life. Like, this is too much. Like, this is not realistic in any way." But now that same guy, the way I know him is because he was the associate professor of pediatric plastic surgery at the University of Utah.
What?
So he was like, yeah, like that movie actually was pretty accurate. Because yeah, he grew up and covered up all of his tattoos, became a Mormon.
It's a coming of age movie.
Yeah.
But it has like a little twist on it. We're not looking at kids. We're looking at grown adults. Well, I mean, I guess they're still teenagers.
They were they were kids at one point, but they ended up maturing after college, turning into the adults that they became. One of them,
which with Matthew Lillard's character Steve-O, really, you see him like he's having the time of his life when he's younger, and then things start to get a little bit more real. Things start to happen in his life, and he's like, well, fuck, am I making a difference? Like, I'm all about this anarchy, and I believe in chaos, but is this what I really believe, or am I just going through a phase? And I think everybody can reflect on that. Like, everybody goes through a phase, and they all have these certain beliefs, but then you grow older, and I think like probably like your mid 20s to 30s, like 25 to 35 is where I think people really find themselves. So that, for me, that's just a coming of age movie. That's how I've always seen it. It's always been like that for me. But yeah, that same thing. I watched this when I was a kid, probably early 2000s. I've always loved the movie. I think it's great. I don't think it's not for everybody, for sure, but it has something there. I think that there's a message there for a lot of people that I think you could take away from this movie. And it's just got a great soundtrack. Like,
yeah, 100%.
So, fantastic movie. My initial thoughts, I loved it. But I want to actually hear from the people that haven't seen it before. Joe and John. Let's go ahead. I'm going to save John for last. Let's go with Joe.
I just noticed that we're dressed like the M&Ms, so that's cool.
What?
So I just noticed that me and John
He's red and yellow.
This is actually my Luke Cage shirt.
Except John's more snarky than I am, so we should switch colors. But so initial thoughts. This movie freaking rules.
Nice.
I thought it was a great take on the coming of age story, and it had with the filter of very punk stylings. The cast in it was phenomenally well done, and the director of photography, following along with his work, or had looked up his work after I had watched the movie, I was like, oh shoot, okay, yeah, this all makes sense now. And it very much was like, it felt like it was shot in the time that they were referencing, even though I know it was made like in the early-ish mid 90s.
1999.
99? Oh, late 90s.
So, yeah, they shot it in 98.
So it felt like it was of the era that it was, and because punk is so gritty and grungy, it's like, yeah, like, of course it was meant to look like that for a reason. The stylings and everything was... It had everything. It had comedy in it. I was laughing most of the time. It was super insightful, and then it was like heavy. Oh man, I was like, it had great pacing. We had talked before, a little bit before the podcast, how Brian was like, people might have trouble following along with it because it's so disjointed. He has like a lot of sidebars and stuff like that, going back and telling stories and then coming back again. And I was like, no, I tell stories like that too. I was like, it didn't seem like out of step for me to follow along with the movie. I loved it.
Cool, I'm glad. All right, John. Let's hear your thoughts.
Do you think I hated the movie?
You've been
like
acting like it. You might have.
I don't think he hated it.
I don't know. You're gonna have to tell us.
And I won't tell you.
Things
I didn't like, things I hated.
Goodbye, everybody. You can find us wherever podcasts are been.
Spreaker, Spotify, Apple Music. No, I enjoyed this movie a lot, actually. I really liked, like was Joe saying, the aesthetic, the punk stylings, the counterculture too, and to sum it up, the counterculture to coming of age movies. We're used to like 16 Candles and The Breakfast Club and those types of films, and this just fucking turned it on its head and kicked it in the teeth. And that's what I enjoyed the most about this too. And like Brian was saying earlier, it didn't relate to like kids coming up. It was like, you can still be of this age, like a 20-something-year-old, and not having your shit together. And that's exactly what this thing painted out too. Now, in contrast to Salt Lake City, you can bring up Lubbock if you wanted to. You can bring up Oklahoma if you wanted to. And I think I didn't know about this film until y'all were talking about it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, they seem to like it, so I guess I should watch it too, which is like how I watch anything, unless it's like, oh, hey, this person was in this thing and I liked him in that, and I'll go follow this, or oh, this guy did the director of photography for this thing and I'll go watch that. But no, I enjoyed the movie a lot, actually.
Cool. Wasn't really expecting that.
Yeah,
You're
explain.
leading on. You're like, nah.
Explain that to us.
I don't know. For some reason, I didn't see John liking the movie. I saw Joe maybe liking it. I think Marissa for sure would have liked it. But I don't know. John's a wild card.
Like my type of movie.
You're a wild card.
This is like the music that I listen to is like almost similarly close to the soundtrack of the film, and I'll go over that later. But yeah, this is like everything. Darby Allin's my favorite wrestler, dude. Like that's almost.
That's true. I didn't think about that. Like Darby Allin's got this whole punk rock vibe going to him and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess I didn't really think about that. But
yeah, I liked it.
Cool. Very glad, because I think this is a movie that really needs to be out there more. Of course, it didn't do very well when it first came out. It was a total flop. I think it appeared very first during like the Sundance Festival.
I think so.
It was like the very opening movie, and just nobody really got it. They ended up doing a sequel, which
Punk is dead.
It was bad. I think Machine Gun Kelly was in it.
Oh no,
he's not a bad actor. He's not a bad actor at all. You know,
Matthew Lillard wasn't even in.
Just
the
crazy.
No, none of the returning cast. I think Heroin Bob might have made an appearance.
He was
did.
in it. It was Matthew Lillard, and I think Mike's character were not in it.
I mean, there's a lot of people that weren't in it. But yeah, Mike, Jason Segel. Let's talk about the cast a little bit before we go into things we liked. It has a great cast, I think. Matthew Lillard, I think in any role he comes into, he brings it. But it had a lot of no names. Jason Segel's in it. And like usually when I show people this movie, they're like, oh, it's the guy from How I Met Your Mother, Jason Segel, and stuff like that.
God.
And they're like, holy fuck. And this is before I think he really was in anything very popular. Who else was in this?
Till Schweiger was in it. Our
Who's
boy
that?
Hugo Stiglitz.
Yeah.
From the Inglourious Bastards.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I never knew that's who that was. Wow.
Adam Pascal's in it. Jennifer Lee's in this. Great. Oh, Summer Phoenix. Summer Phoenix is in it too. She's Brandy.
Brandy. Which we'll get to her a little bit later. She's towards the end. She doesn't have a big part, but I think she has a very big part of getting Steve-O out of this phase.
It was like the final.
Get him
It was like
mature.
the final. It was the final push that he needed to kind of like mature, like he said.
Yeah.
He realized like somebody likes me for who I am, but also is countering and challenging everything that I believe.
That was actually one of the things I liked. Part of the movie.
You want to just get into that?
Wait,
Yeah,
quick
I mean,
question: Who
let's-
was hotter, Brandy or Sandy?
Brandy.
Brandy.
Brandy was way
Brandy,
hotter.
100%. Like,
But if we're really,
Sandy-
but if we're really,
Sandy-
if we're really
No,
talking
she's-
though, it's Steve-O. So
Steve-O's
he's a
like-
true king here.
he was so
is Matthew
charming and
Lillard.
so cool. Like, yeah,
If we're
man.
really talking, it was Trish.
Trish she was a babe, except for the
Ooh.
end when she took her wigs off and she just had the spiky hair. I didn't really like that look for her. I was like,
I loved it.
I'm not digging this final look for you, Trish. All your looks before, great.
Here for it.
like them. Here for it. But the spiky black messy hair.
You
I
didn't
just was
like the Marla Singer look?
Yeah.
I didn't get that, but yeah, no, I didn't like it. That's probably like, I didn't really care for Sandy either, because her just, I don't know, maybe I have a thing with hair, but the hair just looks gross. And
No,
I was like,
hilarious.
hair's important.
she looks like she doesn't shower very often, so
That's punk, dude. What are you talking about?
Punk rock.
That's what.
I didn't grow up with that though, so
F your social norms, your social norms and
Yeah.
conventions.
Yeah.
I grew up in the scene era, okay, like emo
Yeah,
scene.
we were scene kids growing.
we
up.
were new age punk.
Yeah, true.
Post
We're all
punk.
just a bunch of
We were
pussies,
post
though,
punk.
so-
Actually, it's funny that you brought that. We were post punk. So most of the music
Uh-huh.
that I listen to is post punk music, like alternative
The pop punk, Blink 182,
Yeah. Block Party, more punk, Franz Ferdinand, stuff like that. Modest Mouse.
Yeah.
Wait, so you should watch Ed Runners because Franz Ferdinand is the opening song for that show.
You should just watch
Cyberpunk?
fucking
Yeah.
Cyberpunk Edge
Oh
Runners.
yeah, I wanted to see it anyway.
It's on the
Just
list.
watch that for,
I suffered through this game and I still enjoyed it.
Did
and
you ever
everybody
beat
else everybody else is shitting
No,
on it. No,
he
I didn't. Everyone else is shitting on it. And it's because other games pop. You know how it is.
Oh,
It's
well, you
like,
should watch
more-
it then, so then you can tell me
I
how it
want
relates to
Yeah,
the game.
I want to.
Because I have no idea.
Okay, so let's get into things that we liked. Certain things we've already talked about. A few things that we liked, like the casting is phenomenal. But yeah, let's go ahead and start that. Let's go with Joe. Start with Joe.
So y'all had kind of alluded to it just a second ago. There at the end, whenever Steve-O starts to kind of change his mind on like kind of what it is that he wants to do and what he's becoming and all of that stuff, she questions him, but in a very anti-punk way, because it appealed. I think that's why he liked her so much too, because it appealed more to his intellect. She challenged him without being very punk and brash and abrasive about it. She was just like, hey, but what if this? And she was just asking questions. But she was saying that too, like, oh, I just, I was asking questions or whatever. I think that was a key moment. And it was like, you could kind of see his trajectory. And it's like, where does he go from here? Does he go off into this branch? Or if he declines her in that moment or declines the notions and sticks to his guns, over Brixton, probably. He goes in another direction, and so I think that I like that scene so much because it challenged him intellectually instead of, and you could tell that he was yearning for that. He wanted that. Like that's why he liked the talks with the weird brother in the basement. That's why he always liked conversation, and then when he knew conversation wasn't enough, he's like, oh yeah, there's fights too. There's fights for a reason. And so he knew that it appealed to him in a primal sense. He's like, yeah, because that's how we communicate, us punks, is through violence, and then we're cool after that. So like he knew, and his whole presentation was another thing that I liked about the movie, is like his sidebars and asides and stories within stories could only come from a person that saw everything very intellectually and analytically, which is another thing that I liked about the movie. I was like, oh man. And then the way they shot those two it was really cool. But one of the smaller things that I liked, obviously I think we can all agree we all like the music, right?
Oh,
The
yeah.
music freaking
right.
bangs. But one of the smaller things I liked whenever they went to go visit old boy in the hospital.
Heroin Bob.
Yeah. I was like, what's his name? Bobbert. Whenever they carted out that corpse, Sandy like tickled the foot of the as it was going by. She's like, doo-doo-doo-doo. One of the parts I like too, whenever they're like, oh, we're from England, and then the freaking Wyoming guy just started talking louder and slower. I was like, that. Why do you think you're close to
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, you're close to Canada. Like, do you talk to Canadians like that too? Like, I just thought that was so funny. The part where he was like beating up Nazis, very straightforward, very direct. It's like, yeah, every chance we beat them up, every chance we got, and that was that. And I'm like, all right, cool. I could rock with
Fuck
that
yeah.
for sure.
Fuck Nazis and fuck rednecks.
Yep.
that's the message that
Yep.
they try to pull out.
And then one of the last things I liked, again, appealing to maybe his intellect and mine too, the fight. What does it mean? Where does it come from? An essay. I just love that part so much. It was like not only did they bring, again, punk stylings into it, clashing with like intellectualism, and because he was educated, he was a college graduate. And then the part at the end, what was the point of fighting? Final summation? None. There was no point to the fights. I love that a lot. I was laughing so hard at the end of that. But yeah, those are some of the things that I liked from there.
Some of Matthew Lillard's monologues or Steve-O's monologues in this are just so well done, so well written that they just sink you in. Like I could listen to him talk about random things like fighting, like drugs, rock and roll, whatever it is. I could listen to Matthew Lillard talk about anything if he does it in that kind of energy. So like that was always great for me.
That's key. That's
I
key
think
though
it
too.
helped. I think it helped too. It like furthered how smart he was. It showed you more of that. I mean, it's from his eyes and his perspective, yeah. But he also had like a broader scope on everything than everybody else did. Because you see it when Heroin Bob falls in love, like his view becomes so narrow after that. But with Steve-O seeing everything the way that he does, and then I think his monologues just further emphasize that he is the smartest person in this space.
I mean, he graduated high school and had a full ride to Harvard.
Yep.
You know, as his dad tells him, like he could have gone to Harvard, but he's like, nah, I'm gonna go to Salt Lake City University and fuck shit up. Like, you know, like he makes it a point. Like he and he even tells he's like, I did well in school. Like, why? I don't know. He didn't know why he did well. He's just a smart guy. And Matthew Lillard really brought that out like just perfectly. John, things you liked.
Heroin Bob's outlook on chemicals. I don't do any drugs. I drink and I smoke, but smoke cigars, but that's about it.
Uh-huh.
But his outlook on it is just, I'm not to that degree. I'm not fucking like
They're trying to control you, man.
It's a conspiracy, man. The chemtrails and like, no, that's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that, like all to that degree, like there's a hard line right there. But his outlook on that, I'm just like, I'm kind of the same. Like I'll take painkillers when I need to, and I have asthma, so I'll take the asthma medicine to help my lungs expand. But outside of that, it's just like, okay, because even when I had my wisdom teeth taken out, I barely used the painkillers that they gave me, and I was just like, if I need to use it, then I'll use it. Fine, but for the most part, it's still sitting in the. I should probably get rid of it. There's like a proper way to dispose of medicines, because you don't want to get it into the water, man. You don't want it to go through the toilet and like get refiltered and processed. All of that. Steve-O's plaid jacket, his style in this movie was just fucking dope. And I liked it. I liked it a whole lot. My favorite outfit of his. Actually, we'll make that a category at the end of the.
Oh yes.
Oh, okay.
Let's add another
Best
category
wardrobe.
at the end. Yeah, who had the best wardrobe? But his red plaid jacket when he put it on, and that sequence, how they shot that going into Jennifer, that girl, the one who got off her meds, like her party. How they transitioned that, and he just like turns, and everything's the new set already. I really like how they did that. But to go back to the cinematography, that's one of the things that stuck out in this movie that I liked. The couch scene with Steve-O and Brandy was fucking well done, because if you're seeing this in large format, it's just their faces that take up most of the frame.
You hardly tell that they're at a party or anything.
And that's exactly the feeling that you get when you're talking to somebody like that. Because I remember when I met Adriana, I remembered like sitting on a long picnic bench at Bar PM and seeing all this, like hearing all these things going on, but I was only focused on her. Like that was the only person I was interested in talking to. And that's exactly what it was like when they were sitting on the couch. She was like, I just thought that was extremely well done. And to follow up on that, Brandy's eyes, you can see like how they lit it was like her eyes are just, they're brown eyes. Yeah, whatever. But it's just how they lit it. Like she's just a very attractive woman. The soundtrack, including the Stooges, Ramones, Blondie, Generation X, Velvet Underground was in there, Dead Kennedys is at the end. Dope soundtrack. The frenetic pace of the film in the first two acts, like it encompasses everything and how fast everything was moving, and especially at that time too. With you had the Cold War going on, you had Reagan's presidency, you had poverty, even in Salt Lake City. But yeah, how everything just kind of coalesced, tied together, going into the final act, where it kind of slowed down a little bit, especially after the acid trip. That was cool. That's all I got. That's all I got.
Things to talk about the acid trips. Marissa.
Yes.
What did you like? What are the things that you liked?
Aside from all the things you guys have already mentioned, I guess something, because I feel like everything that was on my list you guys already brought up, so it's okay.
Is there anything that's not on the list?
Yes. I mean, I guess it's just that living in Salt Lake is a little cool. You get to see all these like locations where these things were shot. Like that scene where Heroin Bob's like, man, why are you tripping on drugs out here? Basically, that was in like President's Circle at the University of Utah, and I work right next to that. I walk there every day on my lunch break. I walk through that little area, and I'm like, holy shit, that's that fucking park. Like, oh man, it was so cool. And then a bunch of other areas that I've seen around town. I'm like, wow, they really shot it here in town. They wanted you to have that feeling. That world that they're in is lived in. It's so thought out, well thought out. And yeah, that's what I liked about it.
What's one thing?
I would love. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask you this. What's one thing that we mentioned that you liked, but why did you like it?
Well, the music, just because, like I said earlier, I've used to listen to all this music in junior high and high school. Like, I listened to Minor Threat all the time when I was like 12 or 13, just because. And then what got me there is hilarious, because I started listening to that music because of Green Day. I was a really big Green Day fan. And so, but they were considered sellouts because they went mainstream and they started making better music, and so they weren't allowed at this club in California that was a punk club, if there ever was one. I can't remember what it was called, like Bleecker Street or something. It's in Berkeley, California. And my cousin once took me there when I was visiting San Francisco, and I was like 15 or 16 at that time. But I was afraid to go in because there were so many punk-looking people, just like Steve-O in this movie. Like, they had mohawks, huge, wearing leather jackets, and I was like, I'm like a 15-year-old nerd, and I'm gonna pull up, and they're gonna be like, this kid's a fucking poser. So I didn't want to go in.
Which is funny too, because like
my...
I feel like of all the punk people that I've known growing up or had associated with like professionally, they're like the most welcoming people once they kind of like they see that you're down somehow, and they're like, all right, cool, like we can rock with you for a little bit.
Exactly. It's just because I wasn't that familiar at the time. But yeah, like, punk scenes are so inclusive to people that are so young. That's why they have like straight edge cultures, because they think that kids, you know, they shouldn't be restricted from going to clubs and seeing music like this.
Yeah.
So you see that often in really super punk clubs. And I should have known better, but I was just afraid. 'Cause I was like, I'm a little poser. I'm really punk. No, 'cause after I saw this movie.
I'm a little poser.
They're
Punk
gonna
baby.
come around with a stamp and just right on your forehead.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that's also what's cool about the punk scene, whether it was thriving or falling or even resurging, was the fact that there were so many disenfranchised that could be considered a part of that scene. And I think that's one of the cool things that they had kind of go through in the movie too. There were different people from different walks of life, and even Mike, probably the most outwardly least looking punk dude, was the most punk out of all of them.
Yes,
probably
that's the trope I love.
Yeah.
I love that
I love
character.
him. I love the scene of him explaining, like, oh yeah, he just got one of these days. He just got the idea of going and smashing people's windows.
Yep.
And then he gets caught by the police and then breaks out of the police car. And he's like, you know, this is what Mike did. Like, that's just what he did. I was like, Mike is such an underrated character in this movie.
Yeah.
He's so great, and Jason Segel plays it so well. Like, when one of the first scenes we see him in is Steve-O introducing him in the party, and he's like, this guy looks like a poser, but he's not. And then he pushes a guy into Mike, and Mike just smashes his head into the wall, like, and then goes off and like just starts staring, like looking off, and you almost think that there's something wrong with him, and there might very well be. But I think he's just got like this. He's got this anger problem, and
Mike would tell you.
Yeah.
Society is what's wrong with him, Brian.
Yeah.
Man, all Mike wants to do is save the rainforest. Okay,
Yep.
like,
That's all he wants.
very noble of him. But like, he's also the most approachable. But in the scene when they're at the hospital waiting to go see Bob, and he's talking to that little girl, the mother is just like, no, like,
Get away from him.
Which again, the little girl, she doesn't know. That's a thing
true,
that,
like, but
I
he's
think,
just being nice too.
yeah,
Like,
and that's the thing. And you know, Steve-O was being nice to her too. He was just kind of like, oh yeah, like kind of engaging with her. And I think that's one of the subtexts of that scene in the movie overall. It's like, it's just because they look this certain way, there's an indoctrination that happens where it's like, oh, anybody that's othered, stay away from them, kind of thing. Like, or even when they went to Wyoming too, that's kind of the same thing. They were like, oh, we're freaking aliens to them, and the Wyomings were like bugging out at first, and then it was fine, and then that's when they were like, okay, we're gonna instigate some ruckus here.
Which is funny to me, because as counterculture as they were, and then, I mean, Brandy kind of says it at the end, they end up creating their own culture, which kind of puts them in a box, which is a box they didn't want to be in already. But it's only okay because it's the box that we created for ourselves.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah. I think that's hilarious.
There's a line in there that Brandy tells Steve-O. It's like, you're wearing a uniform. You're not being you're not individual. Like, it's a uniform. And that's so true to cliques and like like these groups of people. Like the scene in emo, you know, culture that I grew up in. It was a fucking uniform. Skinny jeans, it's a uniform. I went and bought those because I wanted to fit in.
Yeah.
And I feel like man, at some point we're all posers.
Mm-hmm.
Have you? Do you guys agree? Like,
Yeah.
I'm definitely
in
a
a sense.
poser. I live that lifestyle, but I'm still a poser. Like, it's
Well, I mean, I can trace this all the way back to junior high because baggy clothes were the thing back then, and it was like if you didn't wear this, then you were of outside, which I already was. Like Joe and I growing up looking like a couple fucking lollipops, big ass head, skinny body, and it was already bad enough that we were intellectuals too. So like we took to like the schooling because we had to. That's what our parents told us to do, and we weren't like anybody else. So it was like, how do I try to like mirror what is around me, but at the same time keeping it to what I like?
Yeah.
You had to give up a little bit of ground there to to wear the Jinkos and to have the baggy tees and all that. And it got to a point, mostly the transition into high school, of I don't care about this anymore. Like, yeah, it's the thing. And then sneakers, like that never got away from me, and that's still a thing.
Yeah.
But you had to have the look. And at that time it was like, I am trying to look like this, in a sense, being a poser.
Yeah. I think also there's a certain people come to that realization that Steve-O came to at the end of the movie too. It's like, why do I still do these things? And then it comes to also, well, I can probably still do these things and have the same mentality, but with like a different way. Because he eventually, in some form or fashion, he embraced that part of himself that was like, yeah, I'm really good at this. I'm super smart, and like I still have this drive to make this change somehow. Maybe I don't have to do it in that way. I can still do it in another way. He's still melded those sensibilities together, which I think we all come across too. It's like we all have eclectic tastes and stuff. You can just see by like the history of our movie club or the topics that we've talked about on the podcast before. It's like we're a mix of everything, and you're a product of your surroundings, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad. So it's like seeing those kind of worlds collide like that, I was like, oh, cool. Like that's when the movie, I was like, yep, they wrapped it up as best as you could to get that message across. And I really like that too.
It's funny because there were critics of the movie when it initially came out saying that there was no straightforward storyline and that there was not enough in here to suggest that there was a change for Steve-O's character. Like his best friend fucking died. Like, is that not?
Yeah.
You see the emotional growth he goes to because he practically narrates it for you in like going into the third act. He's like, man, like I felt like it was dying. Like everything I believed in was a lie, or was it worth it anymore?
Yeah.
Right. And it's not like even at that funeral, it wasn't like that was a huge change. We saw what was happening, his slow ascent into growing as a person and a human. And I don't know. I feel like those people just didn't understand. I don't know.
Yeah, they didn't get it, okay? They didn't get it.
They didn't get it.
they didn't get it. All right, we've had a lot of positive things to say. Let's talk about some negatives. Some things that we didn't like. We weren't feeling it. I want to start off on this one because there's really only one thing that really threw me off. That's the acid trip scenes.
Really?
I did not think those were very well done, to be honest. They're I was watching this the other day because I just wanted to get like a little refresher. Now that I'm older and I analyze movies a little bit more than I used to, I could see it, you know. But when I first watched this, or even like a couple times after, I'd always like kind of zone out on those acid trip scenes. I just never really. I was like, man, this is kind of boring to me. That's just my personal opinion on them. Especially the one with him and Sandy. You know, there's a scene where there's blood running down a river, and then he all of a sudden has a snake in his hand. I thought a lot of that stuff, like I've never done acid, but I thought a lot of that stuff was like a little bit just very random.
I think Sean's acid trip is probably more in line with how an acid trip would actually be, because it's just not like, here's the thing and then it's gone. Someone had told me once that they did mushrooms and it warped their perception of reality, but not to a sense of like you're seeing things. It's like you see things, but it was of everything that is around you, so to speak. Yeah. And I think like at that point, from Sean's perspective, we're seeing it from we're seeing that acid trip from Bob's perspective. You know, not necessarily.
Steve-O.
No, I'm talking about.
Oh Sean. Yeah. Sorry, the one.
Because Bob comes up and everything's chill. We're not seeing what what Sean's seeing. We're seeing what Bob is seeing, and that's fucking Sean losing his mind in the snow. But for Steve-O, we are seeing it from his perspective, and I think at that time too, he's questioning a lot of stuff in his life, and I think that might, trigger that bad acid trip. But yeah, just for me, the acid trips always kind of take me out of the movie. Couldn't really focus and concentrate on them, really. Like, that's just personally me, but that's pretty much the only thing I don't really like about the movie. I also don't really like how it makes me fucking cry at the end every single fucking time.
That's powerful. It needs that. That's one of the things I liked
so,
about the movie.
It is so, like, seeing, before you don't really get it. You think Bob takes the pills. You don't really think about it. And then Steve-O drops him off where we first meet Bob. We first meet Bob on that mattress in the living room or wherever the fuck they live. Mm-hmm. It's a crazy ass apartment, but that's where we first meet him, and that's where his journey in the movie ends. Mm-hmm. And man, that it gets me every time. Like Steve-O, Matthew Lillard's fucking performance of him just wailing,
if anybody,
that part, that's the first person he's lost that meant something to him. And me personally, I've never lost somebody in that way. So like, I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna go through that eventually. I've never lost somebody that's super close to me like that. And that's gonna happen to me sooner or later, and that just always gets me, and it just always sparks that like emotion in me. I just cry.
And that solidified like his acting chops. If you had never heard of Matthew Lillard before that movie, which I know he was like in Scream and stuff like that before, but if you had never heard of him at that point and then you'd seen him pull that off, it's just like, yo, like he grounds the story with like his narrative and his thoughts on everything, and he breaks the fourth wall and all that. And then in that scene, I think it's what grounds it even more is because he's not talking to us at that point. He's talking to his friend who's gone. And I was like, man, that was the exact punch that it needed. And then narratively, and then like even for people in general, sometimes things like that will jar your perspective on the things that you're doing and how things are going and all of that. And so that when that all culminated in that scene, I was sitting over here at my desk and I was just like, oh my god, and we're like wiping my eyes and stuff, and Leah's over here like watching Arrested Development, having a jolly old time, and I'm just over here getting my soul crushed by that scene. Matthew Lillard was phenomenal in that scene too.
Mm-hmm. But let's go. To Joe. What did you not like about it?
The only thing I didn't like about it was the use of the homophobic pejorative in that movie. Other than that, everything was great. I was just like,
it's a product of its time.
Yeah, right. I was gonna say it's a product of its time, and it definitely doesn't age well for sure.
You're talking about the scene with Eddie where they're in the car talking about it.
Yeah,
I mean, there's so many different uses of the word in this movie.
Yeah,
they use it a lot of different times.
And I was like, dang,
maybe I just haven't realized it.
Yeah,
sorry, go on.
Oh, go ahead.
I would argue that, like, have you seen that South Park episode where they're like, we're going to take the word back because it just means someone's stupid or like dumb, you're acting like this. But instead of, because they would say the word and then they were like, you're homophobic. You're like, no, we're not saying they're gay. We're saying that they're stupid. And I'm like, man, that word is such a good like insult that I would argue to take it back and make it for stupid people and not for gay people. But you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
That's why I think you hear that, because when you were younger, people would say like, oh, that's gay, or that's dumb.
It's funny that you said that, because a coworker and I had a conversation about that. And they were like, oh, man, that's gay. And I was like, it likes someone of the same gender? They looked at me. Oh, well, you know how we used to say that. And I was like, no one says that anymore, though. I'm not saying that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you can't.
Yeah.
You can say that's lame. Because, like, why were we even saying that in the first place as kids? But
yeah.
still.
That's fucking ignorant. That's stupid.
Yeah.
You can't say the other word that we used to say when we were younger, too. Like,
product of its time. But
I just looked at, and again, that's why it didn't bother me that much, especially this movie made in 98, coming out in 99. And especially with how people were in that scene, too. Like, it didn't...
It
didn't really shake me that
still
much.
it was still jarring though, because I was just like, ugh, and I felt like, ugh, like, ew, yucky. Like, why y'all? We can skip past that part. And I was just like, it stuck out every time to me anyway. I was like, yeah,
I
we
agree,
can.
Joe. I noticed that this time around. I didn't notice last time how much it was used, and then this time around, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
But I know that they weren't trying to be homophobic.
Yeah,
Or at least,
yeah.
I mean, maybe they were, but you know.
But
you know
I do
what I'm
like the topic of their conversation because their friend that was driving them to Wyoming made a good point. He was like, "Hey, man, sometimes that's a thing they feel that way about guys, and so they're just projecting it or whatever, or it's like an insecurity in some form or fashion, and so they got to cut someone down to a certain thing, which you know we all know more than we did then. It seems like a weird cut down. It's just like, yeah, this is my lifestyle. Like I don't get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to say to people, listeners. If they're giving you shit for just existing as you are, being who you are, just, yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah,
It's
that
chill.
was the only thing that stood out to me. For not
Eddie
being,
was the coolest dude too. He's like, gay guys are like some of the best people I know.
Yeah.
He takes it. He's like, they're not mad at me. They want to fuck me. Like, that's why they call me these names. That's what he says, and it's
Their asses
probably
are just
fucking
hater,
true.
They're just hater asses. Is
yeah,
what it is.
pretty much.
Eddie the Mod was great
Eddie the
character.
Mod.
I wish we saw him more in the movie. But who's next? Who did we just go to? We went to Joe, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Joe, was there anything else?
Nope, that was the only thing.
Marissa?
I would say the drug scenes are also some things that I don't appreciate, but that's not because I don't think that they're kind of accurate to taking LSD. So yeah, when you take drugs like that, you do kind of see things like that, but it's more like the snake wouldn't have just been in his hand. It would have been like melting into his hand, and his hand would have been part of the grass and like weird, really, really, really weird shit. So I would say it wasn't accurate because it just wasn't insane enough.
Yeah.
But I didn't like the way they did it either.
I just didn't like how it was shot. It takes me really out of the movie. It's nothing to do with how LSD or acid is portrayed, whatever. It's very specifically, it takes me out of the movie every time I see it. And
Is
I
that not?
don't care for
Is
those
that not
scenes.
the point of it though? It takes him from his original thought, his mindset, and his train of thinking, and it puts him somewhere else. And he can
Right.
tell
Yeah,
that he can
quite
tell it's
literally-
a
he quite
side.
he quite literally talks about it being his escape. So those scenes being unlike the rest of the movie, it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
I like how it was shot too because it was similar to a music video. Cuts,
Ooh.
cut.
Yeah.
Oversaturated colors, more cuts, some blood coming out. Which music video punk in the 80s? All right, cool, that makes sense, right? No.
It did. It did kind of. Now that I'm thinking about it, it does remind me of like early '90s, late '80s music videos and stuff like that. Where they're just fucking wild.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that. Like, okay, cool. I didn't think about that.
You respect it, but you're also like, it could have been.
It still takes me out of the movie.
Yeah.
I agree. I
That's
feel like
the
it could have been
problem.
done
It
better.
still takes me out of the movie. You know. So.
But he said they need to
But
hit
I
you
see
up.
that.
That's right. They need to hit me up. Have y'all seen Midsommar?
No.
No.
I have not. No.
Oh
will
man!
not-
Oh,
I
there's
will
a drug
not
scene in that
It's
movie.
on my list. I have a very large horror backlog that I need to go through.
If you watch anything this
But-
Halloween, watch that movie.
Watch that
It's good.
movie.
Not-
So
I would
should
say watch
watch
Hereditary.
Should I watch that or Hereditary first?
Hereditary fucked me up, bro. I didn't sleep right for like a couple of weeks. So I will tell you, if you want to watch that movie, be in a good mindset. Otherwise, you are going to be fucked up for a little
I'm
bit.
very. I feel like thick-skinned in like horror and stuff
All
like that.
right.
We talked about this earlier, that the Dahmer stuff. I'm two episodes in, and like everybody's like, "Oh, it's crazy." Maybe I'm not there yet, but I'm pretty thick-skinned when it comes.
Okay,
to
then definitely watch
horror.
Hereditary and come back and tell me.
My get on
She's
that.
she wants
I-
she's gonna
I-
f you up. That's what she's doing. She's just like, all right,
No,
fine,
no.
go watch it
I'm
then.
just
Go watch
saying.
it.
We'll see it. We'll see.
I worked
not
in
that-
I worked in news so much that Dahmer, like people wanting to watch shit like that, I don't. I cared nothing for it. Just
Yeah.
because I saw it happening in real life every day. So it's just like I don't see how you have such a fascination with this. Not shaming anybody. It's just like that's my reasoning for why I can't get into any of that shit.
Yeah, you're not big into horror movies either, though, right?
Not really.
Not really. So it's understandable. I like I've said, I'm not. I'm 2 episodes in. It hasn't hooked me. I don't see anything crazy. Evan Peterson's performance. That's his name, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Evan Peters.
Peters or Peterson?
Yeah, Peters.
Peters? Okay. My bad. People are going to hate me for that. His performance so far is great. He's a great actor. I've seen him in other things. Great actor. Just not really feeling it in this movie or in this series quite yet. But we're on to John about what he didn't like.
The scene where they basically got Jennifer off the meds. Chris, that guy Chris. The conversation was great, but they were all just fucking weird.
Yeah,
He said it too. Like,
yeah, he's like
going into that
it's a
party,
really weird vibe.
And what sucks too is that I've been to parties like that before.
Oh, yeah.
Where it was just like, man, it vibes off. Doesn't feel right. I'm not gonna stay here that long. Like,
but not because of satanic rituals, just in general, right?
Yeah, not because
Right.
of satanic rituals. Also, that was fucking stupid. It's like, I'm gonna prove this thing because my thing is the right thing. Like, okay, but why?
And then what?
Yeah, what happens after that? But I did like Steve-O's wording on that too. He's like, yeah, the devil was there. I was him, beating the shit out of this dude for boning my girl.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, that's what I didn't like either. Like, dude, y'all had an understanding in that relationship, but you were the one that
he admits to that.
Much like dudes do. It's like I leaned way too far into it, and now look at me, all sad boy.
I know, and I know that
I think we've all been there too. Like I can name plenty of times where I've been that jealous to the point of like I want but we weren't together. We had no, exclusivity, I guess. And so it's like you can't, like, I understand, but yes, like that's how he describes the devil was in me. I was like, fuck, dude, that's completely true, because he just lost it. He lost his composure. Like, Steve-O's always been like, I felt like had a composure. Even when he got into fights, it was mainly for fun or to
He never took it seriously.
This time he did it to hurt that person. He did it to hurt somebody.
That also kind of goes into, I guess, him not taking Punk that seriously. Like, he had his ideals and mindset together, but like he says near the end of the film, Bob was the reason why he got into everything.
Yeah.
So that kind of starts to shift downward,
at the point,
so to speak.
He was losing Bob to Trish. You could see it. He was visibly upset whenever he talked to Bob about Trish.
Also,
do you love her?
I have nothing against people that get either willingly or unwillingly roped into being the third wheel, but don't take me out to the freaking salt flats and make out right there when I'm trying to talk to y'all. Come on,
It's very
man.
awkward. Yeah, no.
They had already set him up though at that point, and they just went out there to get away from everything else to kind of put things in perspective. And they got a read on him too, which is the most important thing out of that.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, he's hurt. Like, hey, this is other girl. We're gonna introduce you to her. It'll be cool, man.
Also, I liked in that scene counter
Also,
to.
you had a problem with that, but not them fucking in the club while the band was playing.
No, because
Who would have a problem with that?
no, because like they weren't
Punk rock, man.
Yeah,
Punk rock.
They weren't.
Fucking
Yeah.
They weren't doing somebody dirty like that. Like they weren't third wheeling anybody.
Dude, he just took the girl from his homie. Like they had an understanding about that, but
Bob handles it way better than Steve-O did.
Yeah.
But-
Good point. There we go.
And I think it's implied that they hung out. I don't know if they ever, knowing Sandy, I would assume yes, but it is never specifically told that they were hooking up or anything.
It's funny because he was like, "Weren't y'all talking?" He's like, "Yeah, and then nothing happened."
He's like, "I got my eyes on Trish now." Like,
yeah.
But I also think he probably wasn't really into that to begin with, because if knowing Bob, he would have shot his shot if that was the thing. He probably didn't really she probably came into his gravitation at some point and was kind of like they were talking, but he was probably more on the on his heels in that scenario, which I could see why it was easier for him to kind of move it along compared to Steve-O, obviously.
That makes sense.
For sure. We're gonna move on because we're spending a little bit too much time. Quotables. What's your quotables? Let's start with John this time.
Okay, I'm probably gonna cover most of them. Well, it's a crazy fucked up word, and we're all just floating along, waiting for someone else who can walk on water, man.
I like that one.
And then I got freedom is another way of saying death.
Ooh,
I enjoyed that. The sun never sets on the British Empire. Well, the sun never sets on my asshole. It was pretty
Great
good.
line. Steve-O's whole mall monologue is
Yeah, it
probably
was.
one of the
Perfect.
biggest highlights of the movie.
It was in my eye candy scenes for sure.
I rest my case on this. In a country of lost souls, rebellion comes hard. But in a religiously oppressive city where half its population isn't even of that religion, it comes like fire. That was a good one. I don't know who started it, and I don't give a fuck. The one thing I know is that we did it harder, we did it faster, and we definitely did it with more love,
More
baby.
love, baby.
Can't take it away from us. And then, thank you, fool! The car sitting on top of the salt water and just not not going anywhere. It's
Oh
fucking
man,
hilarious.
I had that one on my list too.
I mean, we were certain the world was going to end, but when it didn't, I had to do something. So fuck it. That was a good line too. And then only posers die, you fucking idiot.
Oh,
That
God,
was really, really sad.
God
That
damn
part.
that. The whole part.
And that's what I got. That's what I got.
You said most of the ones I had down to. Joe?
Sean, whenever he was dealing to those dudes in the suits, those stupid Vespas, at the end of that scene, he's like, "Your mom's still taking us to soccer practice, right?"
Kick my ass.
Yeah. Ooh. Bob, when he was like, "Chemicals, man, they'll F you up," which was also an Omen too. Looking back on that one, I was like, "Oh shoot!" I was like, "That's heavy." Steven's dad, whenever they were talking, they were trying to convince him to go to Harvard. He's like, "Steven, I didn't sell out. I bought in." And I was like, "Oh,
That's my favorite line. Yeah, that's.
I was like, that's clever. I like that." And then whenever in the mall scene, the mall monologue, when he was talking, "Hey, mistress, you fancy a shag?" Oh my god.
Perfect.
They were just so obnoxious, and he said it so obnoxiously, which was perfect. And then that party, whenever we first see Mike and Mark, Mark's like, "Americans are always looking for pain," and then Mike's like, "Well, it pains me to hear you say that, Mark." Those are a couple that stood out to me.
Marissa.
Well, I feel like we've covered a lot that I was already gonna, and I guess this dialogue isn't one that I like, but I want to bring attention to, is when they're in the Wyoming liquor store, and he's like, "Well, what about the Nazis?" And he's like, "I wouldn't have say the Nazis were," I forget what it was, but he's like, "I would just say them a gathering of people."
And then when that line popped off, and you see Bob like, "The fuck?" I had the same reaction. I was like, "Oh no!"
Yeah.
Sadly, we still have people in this
I was
room.
gonna say
Right.
that a lot
Yep.
of this movie is extremely relevant still, which I
Yes.
think I liked when I watched this, and I was like, "Oh shit, this still sticks." And that's the worst part. I mean, punk, it's not punk like it used to.
Punk
be,
is
but
forever,
music-
John.
I mean,
Yeah.
really,
Punk's
It was
dead.
set in
Joe,
the
it's the name of the
80s.
sequel.
you know, it was set in the 80s. That's only 40 years ago. And 40 years
Yeah.
is not that very
Yeah.
long. Just a couple that I'm going to throw out there. I'm going to throw out two. I love you guys. Don't get me wrong. But for the first time in my life, I'm 18. And I can say, fuck you. Fantastic. Just the way he delivers it and everything like that. The other one I'm going to mention is, was it the Ramones? Was it Sex Pistols? Ramones. Who cares who started it? It's music. I don't care who started it, and I don't give a fuck. Very,
That's my
very
take.
amazing.
That's my take on music. That's my take on comic books. That's my take on movies. Like, who fucking cares, dude? Just let me like it.
Yes, those two lines, or those two quotes are.
Oh,
so
the
great.
part
So
that same part. He was like, "Don't live your life by song lyrics." I was like, "Oh, he's taking a jab at everybody in human existence," but also,
I also got one more. John, I think you might have quoted it earlier, but it wasn't in your quotes, if I remember correctly. What do you do when your foundation falls apart? I don't know. They don't teach you that in school.
that one's good.
That's
Great.
heavy.
That's a great fucking line too.
Great line. Because school prepares you for life, right? It does not prepare you to how to handle emotions. And I think that honestly, like, that should be changed at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know how they would do it.
School really
But
doesn't prepare you for life.
They don't. I mean, they prepare you to work. Basically.
Right.
They prepare you to work.
That's
They
it.
do not prepare you to like how to manage.
They teach you how to follow rules and to appease the
Yeah.
man.
So I think and they have school therapists, but like I never
They
went
need to have
school
like a
therapist.
course, right? Like if it could be like a
It has to
homeroom
be.
class
It
you
needs to be
take
a
every
course.
morning.
You know,
Yeah.
just like if you're feeling this way, like this is what you should do. You should talk to people. You should open up.
I'll say this, having worked and still working in a bunch of schools, being around a bunch of the students, no matter the grade level, they actually have more resources available than they would have had for us. So like they have like QR codes you can scan if you need to like text somebody or call somebody or anything like that. They have a bunch of those resources available. And then just in general, the younger generations being more aware of these things. Not to say that it's like it's 100% effective, these support systems that are in place, but they're more aware of it and more capable to access them. So I think there is a little bit of a shift going on, but in the overall scheme of things, it's like, yeah, people need to know how to do taxes and how to build credit and stuff like that. Like we need to also, of all the galaxies and the existences that we chose credit and money. So that's a punk sentiment that I'm going to share to y'all. So, but yeah, no, there's resources and things that are available out there. Like it's getting better for sure, but there could be more done for sure.
For sure. I think that's everybody's quotes, right?
Yep.
Eye candy. Some cinematography, which me personally, I didn't see a whole lot of crazy cinematography.
I did.
Joe's raring to go, so let's start with Joe.
So one of my favorite scenes was the mall monologue. It mixed everything for cinematography. It had moving or like tracking shots, dollying in. The lighting was the lighting overall in the whole movie was very harsh and very punk. Almost some of it was like really lo-fi in a way too, which I liked a lot about it. Because again, it grounds you in that. It also may have been like a budget thing too, which is even better because they chose that stylistically. But that mall scene was perfect. It had a voiceover in the guy that was like Anarchy in the UK. It was audio work from the director. He was like, yeah, the dude didn't really say it how I wanted it to sound, so I just dubbed it. But then his monologue was great, the way they have his focus and then they move off to some things on the side, and then that part at the end where the camera changes to the low angle and the lights coming in like that from up above, you can see Steve-O and the sun coming in. I was just like, oh shoot, like they mixed a little bit of everything, camera movements, rack focusing, like shifting focus from one person to another. It was very dynamic and it was very moving, but it also was still very grounded. Like it didn't move so much where it disoriented you. It moved in a way that was narratively it made sense for him because he's talking to us, breaking the fourth wall the whole time. Or anytime he did break the fourth wall, it was just like they still composed the scene how they would a movie. And even though there were other characters next to him, he would talk to the camera and then like talk back to them, and they would still be able to switch so seamlessly between them. And just the feel of everything was so grungy and grounded. A lot of handheld stuff too. And then I liked that they had the more dramatic moments were done, you could tell, like on a rig or like on a dolly or something like that, where it was like, okay, that made the scene feel more grounded. So like up until they mixed that, so whenever something was more dramatic, it was on like a dolly. And then at the end of the movie, when Bob dies, it switches to handheld in a dramatic scene. And I was like, that's the perfect dynamic they could have used. They switched it to handheld to even ground you further, and it was a close-up on that as well. And the fact that they never had a close-up of Bob until he checked his pulse. You had that distance from him because it wasn't him anymore. So it was a wide shot, and you see the two of them, the environment that they're in, and how they are in this space. It was so cool to see this.
It showed how close they were, even though Steve-O had a room above his room. Their general area, like their living room, was just near that window. It was warm, first of all, so there was some sun coming in. And it was the easiest place for them to both be because it was essentially the first floor of the place.
Yeah.
It was the second floor, but that was their living space. So it showed that this happened in a place where they connect the most. That's where all the conversations were. That's where all of the heavier dialogue actually
That's where
comes
we
in
first
from,
meet
too.
Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I said that earlier. Joe, I completely agree with you about the mall scene. I think it's very well done. The only other thing, we mentioned it earlier, the scene with Brandy and Steve-O on the couch. Very well done. And those are my two We've already talked about the Brandy and Steve one. Marissa.
Yeah, Brandy and Steve-O for sure. I love that. It's just so close on their faces, and it's just so intimate. The space between them in that scene is really well done. And the mall scene.
And the mall scene. I think those are the two strongest, in my opinion, cinematography. In the movie. John, do you have anything else?
The fighting slideshow I thought was filmed very punk because it had a still image, which was a panoramic, and it would just like the camera would jump and it looked like it was on paper, like it was animated almost. So it was showing the whole scene, but you only got pictures of it as it's jittering across. And I thought that was cool, and the way they presented it was super punk too. Spray paint to point to diagrams and shit like that. You had dudes without their shirts on, they're just people kind of thing. But that whole presentation of it too, I enjoyed that.
One other thing I was going to mention, you just brought it to my mind, is the opening of the concert scene, the overhead shot of the crowd into the stage. I thought was very, very cool. Anything else?
One more. Y'all missed this one. It's the first thing. It's the first thing in the movie. The opening credits, the album art with everyone's names on it. I thought that was good. Fucking dope. Yeah. I was like, this artistically already put me in the space of, okay, I know exactly what I'm gonna expect for this.
Also, part of it being bootlegged like that is also very punk.
We're gonna move on to the next category of oh shit moments. I think we can all agree Bob's death. The reveal of that was probably the biggest oh shit moment, because I don't think a lot of us saw that coming. When he had
a handful of pills and was doing this, I was like, that fool's gonna die. Like I also, immediately,
especially from the mods. Like I already knew. I was like, that's not good. And it only made it worse because Bob set himself up. He was so in control of himself most of the film, except for when he had his rage fits. But it turned into he was drunk, and that lapse in judgment and immediately.
He was only drunk because of what he had thought about after visiting his dad. So that shook him all the wrong way, which I think it sucks too. It's all about timing in that regard too. The fact that him and Steve-O were they were growing a little bit apart. He didn't have somebody to bounce it off of, only on their car ride home. Whenever Bob was like, "Did I like disappoint my dad, or did I let him down?" He was like, "No, he let you down, man." And like, they weren't able to bridge that gap. Or like, and I don't even know that Bob talked with that with his lady, because like, it probably wouldn't have came to him drinking alcohol if he was actually able to talk about it first. But wherever the
he opened up to Trish about it.
Wherever the disconnect was, it led him to that, which is like, man, so heavy.
Yeah. But yeah, that scene, by far the biggest oh shit moment. But are there any others that you guys have noticed or that threw you off guard?
We'll go with Marisa, because she
let's see.
Oh, now I put her on the spot.
You did.
I got a few. I
have a couple too.
I wasn't ready.
The police raid at the party. I was like, oh shit, when they busted in. The redneck fights at the other party. I was like, oh shit, when they busted in. Seeing Sean in the streets was kind of heartbreaking. It's like, damn, his brain is fried, and he has nothing now, and that kind of starts the shift for Steve-O's character too, moving forward.
That was one of mine.
For the rest of his life. Mike fighting the cops and escaping.
Yeah.
this
fool in rage mode, just kicking out the window and then just running down the street.
He broke the handcuffs too.
Say at the first concert where he goes like, I got to do something. And he gives his glasses to Mark, and he just goes up there.
The fight at the concert. The police raid fight at the party, the fight at the rednecks.
Mostly fights.
Mostly all the fights, yeah.
All the fights.
I liked at the beginning those weirdo dudes getting jumped at the very beginning. I was like, oh shoot, like they're setting it off right here, right into the very punk opening credits. The whole scene with Mark. That in and of itself was like, oh man, like he's so extravagant, but also like paranoid and weird, and like they were in the shower, they were all close together, and they're just like, yeah, it has 7 modes of comfort, and he's like switching through it, and Devo's just like, but he was also like leaning more into it the further they were talking in the shower. The waterbed part was great too. But
I
at
don't
the
think we've. Oh god.
at the end of that scene though, when he like freaking starts shooting the couch and everyone's bugging out like, oh shoot! But at the end, at 180s, he's like, oh come on, give me a kiss, and he has the gun and he's he's over here like right here.
Constantly pointing it at Bob. Like,
I
not
like,
even
I like when he
realizing
was
it.
when he was talking to Steve-O when he was sitting on the island and he was pointing the gun at him. He was just like, no.
Yeah, like I do like that he was like, man, I hate those things, man. Like you can put that away. Like we don't need any of that. And then it just escalated.
I feel like we haven't talked about Mark nearly enough on this.
I don't think we need to.
I know, right?
He's dead.
He's so great.
Damn.
Maybe we don't know that for sure.
He's dead. If he never came back, he's dead.
He's super dead.
All right, Marissa. Any oh shit moments for you that threw you off guard, or have we covered them?
I think they're all covered. Really, the only one that shocked me, at least the first time I saw it, was Bob's death at the end of the movie. I was like, oh, come on. Like, I thought for sure, like, what the fuck? I mean, the minute he took the pills, I was like, this motherfucker dead.
Yeah.
But it was still like, oh, come on. He was so sweet.
Oh, the part where he passed out from the gangrene that he had on his knuckles. I was like, oh.
Is he gonna be okay? He's fine.
They named a new disease after him apparently. So
Yeah.
Wow.
Would y'all put Sandy fucking that other dude as no shit moment?
you know what? Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. I was like, fuck that should be a no shit moment because I don't think we knew that they had an understanding, but I didn't think I ever see like him walking in on that.
And we didn't know he was gonna beat that dude's ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Right?
I kind of knew as soon as I saw him going, like his facial expression when he walks in there and she tells him to get out. Oh, I was like, he's about to fuck him up.
For some reason, I thought it was gonna be his dad.
Oh, that would be fucked up.
And I thought it was gonna be Mr. Levy, and I was like, oh no.
At a super fucking weird, awkward party. Like,
Yeah.
all right. Now we're gonna move on to change one thing, make it better. I'm gonna start off just because the one thing I didn't really like was the acid trip scenes. I think that if you can make it trippy, but just keep it engaging. For me, it wasn't engaging, and that's I just wish it just takes me out of movies so fucking every time. For me to make those acid trip scenes a little bit more engaging, a little bit more interesting, that would be one thing I change.
I would agree.
Is that the only thing, John, or do you have
That's the only thing. This movie, there wasn't a lot of things I didn't like about it, but yeah, that was. We could probably change the presentation on that. Budget probably has a lot to do with that. So I would think everything as it was, it didn't bother me.
What about you, Joe?
The pejorative, as mentioned earlier, but that scene also, I was like, they could have, when it was made, I was like, they could have used a little bit of like special effects and better sound design to make that scene like kind of pop off the way it could have elevated it to like the next level. It made it more trippy or lean more in that direction for sure. But I agree.
Marissa?
Yeah, just the drug scenes I would have done slightly different, and then maybe incorporated real punks from off the street. Like, kind of, I would have liked to see that, like, little interactions with real people that were in the punk scene a little more. But I guess the punk scene wasn't that alive at the time. Also, in Salt Lake, it had already been, like, snuffed out.
I would also say throw a little bit more Mike and Eddie in there. Because I really like Eddie. I don't think we got nearly very much time with Eddie.
What we picked up from Eddie too is that he floats in between everybody, which was cool because he was the only that makes him like the coolest dude in the movie. I mean, aside from Steve-O, but he was everyone. He knew everybody. He knew what ticked. Excuse me. He knew how not to push it too much because when that fight pops off, he's just standing in the back, covering his beer, like, oh shit, I don't want to spill this. But yeah, I agree. Put more Eddie in there.
Hell yeah. Did I go? Did everybody have a turn? Okay, just making sure. I'm new to this hosting thing, so
You've done this once.
I've done this once. Probably a year ago.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
Are you guys watching this again?
Yeah.
5 Steve-O's, yes.
John, would you pop this in? Would this be a yearly watch or
5 middle fingers up. is right.
5. You got one
middle
more
fingers
person.
up.
You got one more person. Hey, you come here.
Here, no, Brian put 2 up. Melissa put 1 up. That's 5 right there.
Wait. Okay.
I can tell you, I've watched this movie this year probably 3 or 4 times alone. So it is a very good movie. It's something I can kind of just sit back, relax, and enjoy it. If I want to be sad, I can just watch that ending scene and get very sad. Because I think we all need to cry sometimes.
Right.
But yeah. So I'm glad you guys really liked it. I'm glad you guys would watch it again. Now we come to the controversial topic. Does it sequel? Fun fact, it had a sequel, or it does have a sequel. And I do not recommend watching it. It's nothing like the original.
I saw like a
Same director and everything, but man, it's so bad.
All right, we can skip that then. Let's go to Steve-O's best outfits. So I have a bunch of links. I'll superimpose this in the edit, but I have a link right here. Let me put this in the chat as soon as I figure out how the chat works. Oh, text channels, right? Text channel, general. There we go. So here's the first look. This is a Pinterest thing. So this is his blazer looks here.
Oh yeah, I can.
He has the blazer look
I can do it on
here.
my phone.
He has
The blazer was always a great fucking jacket for him. His mall outfit.
His mall outfit is in there. The acid trip outfit is on a subreddit called Lady Boners.
Nice.
I think
was
Matthew
just talking to
Lillard
Brian
has
about
always had
Reddit.
great. I think Matthew Lillard in most of his movies has always had really great costume design. You think about this. You think about
13 Ghosts.
Hackers.
Yeah.
13 Ghost. Hackers is another one. So
Okay, I think that's the last of his outfits.
his 90s style, I would say that was very, very great.
I think my favorite outfit was the mall scene one, just because he has a fitted shirt on, and I have a NASA shirt it's same white color, same fit, long sleeve going all the way down.
His wristbands are cut off tops of tube socks.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good look. That's a good look.
Johns, man. Long Johns at the very end, him coming down, just wearing his fucking long johns.
He spills the
like
beer
that.
on himself.
They're looking at a broken TV with a picture of Ronald Reagan on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
They're just like, you know.
Let me see. If I can
I
find
love the Wyoming outfits for all of them. For Steve-O, Bob, and Bob is basically the same thing all the time. That military look jacket,
The olive
that
drab
he's got.
jacket, yeah.
But Steve-O's like his gray, like furry jacket that he wears. That was great. Especially, I really love his outfit in the flashback to when he just graduated high school. And he's talking to his
Yes, that's my pick.
the big
That's my
mohawk. Fantastic.
He maxed it out. That was like the maxed out punk look for sure.
Oh yeah, I love how he's kept the blue hair. You know, he
So,
toned it down a
the
little
story-
bit and has blue hair.
The story behind that is he originally bleached his hair, but he had burns in his scalp, so they put blue in it, so you couldn't see it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's
he
interesting.
fried his scalp, and they were like, "Oh shit!" He's like, "I'll just put blue in it," and then they just put blue in it.
He like covered it up.
All right, let's move on to the scene thief, which I think we all know who it is. But let's go ahead and just say it all at once, should we?
Okay.
Okay, 1,
3,
2.
2.
Wait, on
1.
3 or 1, 2, 3, go.
1, 2, 3, go.
Okay,
1, 2, 3.
his dad.
Hero. Yeah.
You said his dad, and you said Eddie. All right, Joe. Dad. Why did the dad steal the show?
No, I was playing. It's definitely Matthew Lillard for sure.
Oh, yeah, hands down, dude. That scene. If you weren't drawn in by the mall scene, the ending where he finds out Bob is dead, that fucking put it
Yep.
over the top.
For me, Matthew Lillard's he's so charming and he grounds you in the chaos that was like the SLC punk scene. He brought Steve-O's intellect into all of the asides that he had with us as the audience, and then, which is funny because it brought reason to the disorder that he lived in, that he was like striving to achieve. And he also brought the heart into like the lives of all the people that he cared for. Like he couldn't shake that, even though when they were in the salt flats, he was like, yeah, like my heart's the size of a pea or whatever. And he was like, no, you're being angsty and punk, which is cool. But also like, he wasn't really being true to himself, which is what we saw develop in that final act. He really does make the coming of age story like hit all the marks, I think.
I mean, he very much carries the movie. It's all basically about him. He's in what 100% of the movie, 100% of the scenes, maybe actually 98, because I think there's a couple scenes with his dad, like at a bar. So
Yeah.
so, but I think like other than that, he's in every scene. So yeah, 98, 99, whatever, and very much just carries the movie. I don't think. If it wasn't for Matthew Lillard's performance, I don't think I would enjoy this movie as much as I do now.
I don't even know who would be able to play that role at that time.
I can't see anybody else. It's one of those roles that just
Edward Norton.
clicks.
Oh, no.
No.
He was in a coming of age movie around the same time. He was in Fight Club. Came out the same year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Edward Norton's
Different
not
character.
my favorite
completely.
person.
Yeah, he's all right.
He just comes off as
Actually,
a douchebag.
he's not
more
even
or
he's
less.
not even okay. He's all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah, I agree. There's no one else that could have pulled off this movie, and I don't think there's anybody with the chops as big as his at this time too to pull off that final scene too, the death reveal. Nobody else could have did, and with the flair and the style that he did it with, like there's nobody that could come close. I don't think
He did it harder. He did it faster. He did it with more love, baby.
That's right.
Is it unanimous? Marisa, do you agree?
Yeah, 100%.
So I have a question for y'all then. Here at the end, I wanted to add something on. We can start with Brian. On a scale of 1 to 10, whether it be ideals, whether it be philosophy, taste, style, etc. Brian, how punk are you?
How punk am I?
They're just mashing
I'm a
all
punk.
of those things together, like
From
ideas,
poser
thoughts.
to punk?
Yes.
I'm poser, dude. I'm a fucking poser. Like,
No.
no. That's a hard question. But
It's
I
like a
think, on
scale. It's like
1
yeah.
through 10. Maybe I'm like a 6 or 7.
It's a spectrum.
Maybe. You know. Yeah, I would say 6 or 7. I don't know how I could justify that, but since I wasn't prepared for that answer, that's what we're going with.
What about you, Marisa?
I'm a 6.5.
6.5. In terms of
you ask
ideals,
me next?
philosophy, music, music taste, anything, style, clothes, sensibilities, any of that.
I would say I am punk rock as hell. I am the punkest punk of all.
out of all of us, I agree.
Only a
Out of all of
poser
you.
would say that.
No, I feel like I live my life very unapologetically. I don't care what anyone thinks. I don't know. I don't like seeing people get picked on either. I don't like seeing bad shit going down. I'll say things. I'm not afraid to speak up. So I feel like I'm very punk rock in that way. Especially if I see someone doing something wrong in public to somebody else, I will step in. I'm not gonna not do
Yeah.
anything. Right?
Don't
So,
do
like,
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't start none, won't be none. So I say I'm the punkest of all. That's all.
Damn, all right.
John, what about you?
I've only been in technically 3 fights in my life. One was against Joe. The other was
Ooh.
against my best friend in junior high at the time. Another was at a house party where it was more of a scramble and like fighting people to defend myself to get out of the fucking kitchen where everybody was in, where it was going down. In terms of ideology, it would probably be, let's put it at like a very solid 7. But if there's anybody I relate to the most in terms of how they comport themselves, it would probably be Eddie. I can float in between groups, and I realized that I was thinking about it in retrospect. I was talking to my friend here recently too. It's just we were talking about the people we used to hang out with, and I was like, I hung out with everybody.
Yeah.
I knew the kids. I knew the kids that played soccer. I hooped with the kids in basketball. I was around the theater kids a lot, and that kind of funneled into us in the creative parts of it, like doing the short film stuff that we did in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was brown, so I knew those kids. I was in the AP classes, so I knew those kids. So I relate more to Eddie than I do to Steve-O, but my punk ideology would probably be at a 10. I do believe in counterculture. I do believe in the way that the government is run. It's good, not great.
Yeah.
It's not what it could be potentially, and in a utopian world, whatever. Yeah, fine. I also relate to this movie to Fight Club because I love that movie in the sense of Tyler Durden's plan to reduce everything to zero and start everyone with a clean slate. Like, oh yeah, that'd be fucking wild, right? That'd be dope. Mr. Robot too. That kind of links to that in the sense of there needs to be no establishment, and Elliot Alderson tries to take it down from within, which I thought was really cool. The music I listened to, it's like Fast, Death from Above, 1979. You got older Block Party. The newer stuff too is kind of good. I talked about Franz Ferdinand, Modest Mouse, and then there's metal that I listen to. So it's like Metallica and Between the Buried and Me, and then I'm listening to like all kinds of shit too. So it's not of I'm in one lane. It's like I'm in all of these lanes, but they all kind of thread themselves together.
I like it. I like that answer. I agree with the philosophy, ideals, and their sensibilities in terms of like, oh man, society isn't doing enough for people and those kinds of things, and putting people in boxes and things of that nature. Same thing with John. A lot of what he said rings true for me. Being able to mix in with different types of people, and then being open to accepting those types of people unless they bring detriment or harm. To Marisa's point, I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. I asked y'all that question and say all those things and agree with y'all to say it doesn't freaking matter because Brian's right. We're all posers in some form or fashion. So none of us are punks.
But that's punk, right?
Exactly.
Who fucking knows, man? Who knows, man?
It's a fucking uniform, bro.
If this shirt could be ripped, if my physique was a little bit better, like I was when I was younger, then I would totally have rips in this shirt. My jeans, only one pair of my jeans, my Levi's. My Levi's are ripped at the knee, and I was like, I could probably just do the rest of it too. But that's because I like punched a hole in it. I don't know how. But I punched a hole in the knee, so it's just all kind of like flapped out. And where my phone sticks out in the pocket, like it's already starting to burst through. And I was like, well, these are the only jeans I have that are gonna look like this. But I run them shits into the ground.
I think most of my jeans have holes in them. Like
Mine get holes
style wise.
Yeah.
Mine
I see. It sucks because I like the punk aesthetic. You see my base right here? Like it has skulls and shit on it. There's one right here.
Yeah.
The head.
Also,
There's
you
one
want to
down
if
here.
you want to shred, you can shred.
Yeah.
My this has like skulls and roses and shit on it. I like the aesthetic. I like that. My bottle has the same thing. Here's fucking Johnny Silverhand here.
I think if I was born in the 70s, I would definitely be where Steve-O was at.
Yeah.
If I was born in that time.
Dad was punk. Our dad was
Right.
punk.
Super
That's
punk.
him.
Oh, nice.
That's
Yeah.
his base when he was in a band. So they were like in this kind of up rock, like high tempo rock band that he was in. When we were kids, he skateboarded. He got into gang fights when he was younger. He was poor.
He was disenfranchised somehow. That makes him punk for sure.
Yeah, dad is punk. Dad is punk. And I think that's kind of why I like stick to that too, because like not that I wanted to be like that, but I always thought like, oh, that's why I got tattoos. Like dad has tattoos and he's just fucking badass.
Right.
Well, all right. Does anybody else have any random questions or things they want to say? Any
I
final
like Joe
thoughts?
adding that at the end. It's sort of
That was great. That was good.
That was a good question, yeah.
That was good.
Thank you.
John's response that he's only ever really fought Joe and someone else made me think I've really only ever fought my sister. but that's enough. If y'all know my sister, any fight, I feel like me and Irene have physically fought at least 4 times in our life, and each time it was fucking insane. So you know what? I'm prepared for any fight.
Yeah,
fighting my sister prepares me.
That makes you more punk than all of us because she's super punk too. So like, you know.
For real, Irene is the elder punk for sure.
Yeah.
Shout out to Irene.
Yeah.
Shout out to Irene.
All right, we're done here. Brian, good job. Well done. How many
Thank
middle
you,
fingers
man.
do I give? That one's just for you.
This one's for you too.
Yeah.
That was their term.
time.
That was their
I go like trigger out.
I'm
Ooh.
like this, man. Just
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Stone Cold style. That's where I learned it from. I'm not gonna lie, dude. That's where I learned flipping people off was from Stone Cold Steve Austin.
I don't ever flip people off whenever people drive terribly here in DFW. I look at them and I just go, thumbs down.
One time I looked at somebody. So imagine I just went
And they were like, oh.
like, use your fucking head, you fucking idiot.
Like giving somebody a thumbs down. The people are used to
That's
getting
worse.
Yeah, people are used to getting flipped off. Thumbs down is like unsatisfactory, and they're like, oh shoot, my pride.
You should do it slower too. Just
No, because the traffic moves too quick.
take both your hands off the wheel and
I just lean out the
disappointment.
window and do it. Yeah, that's it.
All right, we're done. When She-Hulk ends, by the time this recording, let me do that again. So we got stuff coming up. When She-Hulk is done, we're getting right into ranking our MCU TV shows, and we got a couple special guests on for that one. That one should be fun. Yeah, I don't have to do it, so we're doing more Fun Day stuff under the brand of Fun Day.
Umbrella.
And with yours truly. I realized that all I have to do is host something, and it's Sunday Fun Day, like immediately. You can't have it the other way around.
I would say I'm so behind on Marvel shows.
You know, don't worry about it. And I thought about this too. Like, I'm probably gonna do some stuff without y'all, just so you don't have to do stuff all the time. But like, the more streamlined stuff, I'll have.
Can I be in it?
In the pocket? Yeah, sure, whatever. But we got that. We got that coming up. We still have Hot Take Court that Joe has to plan out. Chanel's gonna be a part of that process as well. So we got some episodes, some eps coming your way. We're again trying to do this thing once a month. So if we don't get around to it 4 weeks in between, just bear with us for a little bit. We got lives, y'all. We're just out here living. We're just out here living.
We still want to bring it though. Don't get that twisted.
Yeah, don't get it twisted. Fools. Joe,
Yo.
Brian,
Hey.
Marisa,
Yeah.
them, me. We kind of want another, everybody.